as you can hear right there. The idea for this series came about during the summer of 2020 when the Classified Staff Council expressed interest in using some of their funds to highlight social justice issues, specifically issues that our classified staff may be interested in. Classified staff members were surveyed with the names of local activists and also encouraged to submit names of leaders that they wanted to hear from. The speakers you'll hear from in our series were those who received the most votes from the classified staff. And today, we love to welcome Lauren Pena, our first speaker in this series. Lauren Pena is the directing attorney of the Civil Law Self-Help Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. In her position, she works with her staff to support the mission of providing self-represented parties access to justice. Lauren manages the center's website and prepares and updates over 300 legal forms for the public to use. Lauren oversees the legal information provided at the center for issues such as evictions, landlord-tenant disputes, debt collection, and probate. Prior to working at the center, Lauren practiced in commercial litigation and bankruptcy, and she is also a former rebel and graduate of the William S. Boyd School of Law here at UNLV. So today, please join us in welcoming Lauren. She'll be giving us an overview of her work, and please note that at the end of her presentation, we'll have time for a short Q&A. We did receive a couple of questions in the registration from folks, so we'll answer those questions first. And then with the time that we have left, we'll answer questions that we receive in the chat and the Q&A feature of WebEx, as well as if folks want to raise their hands following the presentation, there should be a tool that allows you to do so. So on that note, we'll say welcome, Lauren, and please take it away.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. And I want to especially thank Stormy, Kim, and Deborah for all you have done to put this together. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. I want to thank you all for joining us here today. I am truly honored and really humbled to be the first classified speaker in this series, and I look forward to seeing who else is going to be requested to speak. But as a Rebel alum and a graduate of UNLV and longtime Las Vegan, this is truly an honor, and I feel incredibly privileged to be here. So as Kim mentioned, and as I've mentioned, I went to UNLV for undergrad. I just wanted to share that, and it was some of the greatest years of my life. And then I moved on to Boyd School of Law, which I can't speak enough praises on. And other than a couple of semesters away in Washington, D.C., when I worked for Senator Reid and Congressman Jim Gibbons, I've been in Las Vegas since I was a very young girl. And I'm incredibly dedicated to this community. The city has been wonderful to me and my family. And I have a giant extended family, so it's home to me and so many people who are family to me. So part of my background as in social justice is largely grounded in my love for Las Vegas and wanting to give back to the people who have given to me throughout the years and the community that has, raised me. So I'm super excited to talk about my work. Specifically, though, I was so excited to talk about the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. So to give you kind of a broad overview of what I'll be talking about today, I'm going to give you a little bit about the history and the departments at Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. I work in a department of legal aid called the Civil Law Self-Help Center, which I will describe in more detail as we go on today. But the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, you'll often hear me say I work for Legal Aid and the Self-Help Center, but the Self-Help Center is just a department of legal aid. So without further ado, I will share with you my presentation. So who are we? The Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, it's a private nonprofit organization, and we are a law firm. But our mission is to preserve access to justice and provide legal counsel to individuals, even if they can't afford it. I think one of the main major components of legal aid work is that we believe that nobody should be deprived their day in court just because they can't hire or pay for a lawyer. As you are all aware, legal fees can be quite expensive, And there are a lot of people who have rights that are difficult to assert on their own, and without the assistance of counsel can very well get trampled on by the system. So much of our mission is to provide folks their opportunity and to give them the awareness and the access to that justice, which often means their day in court. So we started back in 1958 as the Clark County Legal Aid Society. I say we, but I wasn't born then. Just want to clarify. So the Clark County Legal Aid Society opened its doors in 1958. It was basically a pro bono referral agency. So it worked for attorney volunteer lawyers who wanted to give some of their free time to doing pro bono work. This Legal Aid Society helped farm out that pro bono work to folks. And you'll see from the old clippings that, that year, 293 persons received help from Legal Aid Society. And this is just to give you some background to show you kind of how far we've come over the years. You'll also see what all the lawyers looked like back then in that picture. So who we are today, we've grown quite a bit. We are the largest legal aid organization in Nevada. And you'll hear the name legal aid throughout different states, and there's different iterations. But here in Nevada, there are different nonprofit legal organizations, but we're proud to say that Legal Aid is the largest one in Nevada right now. We have 158 total staff, 79 attorneys, and we helped about 145,000 people in 2019. The numbers have not yet been tallied from 2020, but we'll get to talking about how COVID affected our practices and how we were still able to help as many people as we tried to help as many people as possible, but and we did hit some pretty high numbers, but those final numbers haven't yet been tallied. The Legal Aid Center also operates the 2 self-help centers, one of which is the one that I manage and direct, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. Legal Aid Center also manages the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center. I'll give you more details about that, but that center was opened in response to the October 1 shooting. As there were so many victims and people who were affected by the traumatic events of that day, the Resiliency Center offers some relief and support to victims of crime. And our website is www.lacsn.org. I encourage you to visit that website after this presentation. I will tell you, not just as an employee of Legal Aid, but even before I worked at Legal Aid, I was constantly referring people to Legal Aid just for information about what happens if you buy a new car, can you sue your neighbor for X, Y, and Z, small claims information. Also, there's free classes open to anyone in the community. So take down that website, feel free to peruse it. So COVID-19, naturally, we had to make some adjustments in response to COVID-19. We had to switch everything that we do to virtual services. And, everyone had to make changes based on the impact of COVID-19. What I will say is sometimes the population of people who seek out legal aid services can be not as tech-friendly, right? So I can tell you from personal experience at the Civil Law Self-Help Center, we were a walk-in service completely before March of 2020. We didn't really answer the phone lines. We didn't have any kind of electronic manner. People who were looking for legal assistance walked into that courthouse. Well, all of that changed in March 2020. So we had to act fast and quickly, as I'm sure so many of you have had to adapt. And we switched over and tried to service our clients and customers as best we could. We opened hotlines. We opened email addresses. We came up with this legal and financial toolkit, which gets updated daily, which is on the Legal Aid website. And when you peruse it, you'll see. And it has all kinds of great information that's updated about what utilities are being forgiven right now, what loans are in forbearance, what mortgages are in forbearance, what are your rights as a tenant currently under COVID-19 eviction moratorium. So I strongly suggest that if ever you have people or friends in your life or clients or anyone you're assisting who want more information as to just what's the status of things during COVID-19 financially and legally, check that toolkit out. We also do Know Your Rights town halls which are open to pretty much the public. Know your rights if you're a renter. Know your rights if you're a homeowner. Know your rights if you are, debt collection, all of those things. And so those town halls are really great. We pull in really experienced speakers to host those. And we're still providing our legal education classes. Pre-pandemic, we were working with the Boyd School of Law to have live classes in divorce, custody, small claims, immigration. Well, post-pandemic, we are still offering those classes with great students of the Boyd School of Law, but they're all virtual now. So anyone can attend from the comfort of their own home, phone, wherever they want. And we still have our telephonic Ask a Lawyer programs. Now, these programs are really wonderful for anyone who's looking for quick legal advice. Now, that could be because they're going through a divorce and representing themselves, and they just need a lawyer to kind of answer a couple of questions. We have a family law Ask a Lawyer. Or maybe there's a tenant who just has questions about what they should do with a problematic landlord. We have a landlord-tenant Ask a Lawyer program. Now, again, these used to all be face-to-face, but with COVID-19, they're now being held telephonically. Folks can sign up on our website as well. So that's just another resource I want to share with you. And we just are constantly trying to innovate new programs. How can we support the Las Vegas community, Southern Nevada community, with programs where people can take education away, right, and use it to improve their lives? And one thing you'll hear in Access to Justice is there's a spectrum of legal services. Some folks just are right here and they just need a form, some paperwork, some information on how to proceed. And some folks are here and they absolutely need a lawyer to take their case all the way to trial or wherever it may be. And a lot of folks fall in the middle here. Some folks are here and need a class. Some folks are here and just need, a few months of representation, whatever it may be. We're always just trying to reach as many people as possible, because knowing your rights and knowing how to access this really, what can be really complicated system is important, and it helps ensure that people have that access and feel heard, which is our biggest mission. So I'm going to go through now and talk about our different departments and what each does. So the Children's Attorney Project, this is just a really special department of legal aid. This gives children in foster care a voice in court. So the impact of that and the gravity of that is just, I'm just always so overwhelmed by my colleagues who work in the Children's Attorneys Project. So they deal with all kinds of situations, from newborn babies who are in foster care to kids who are 17 years old. Here's the importance of this. When you are a child in foster care, there are a lot of people around you telling you what your best interests are, right? There's a judge, there's maybe a lawyer on a parent side or a grandparent side. Maybe there's a lawyer from the state involved. There are a lot of people, investigators, telling you, 14-year-old you, what is in your best interest and what you may or may not happen to you. The CAP attorneys is what they call them, Children's Attorneys Project. The CAP attorneys, they represent that child. So they talk to that child and they say, what do you want? Confidentially tell me, what do you want me to advocate for in court? Do you want to stay with mom? Do you want to go to grandma's house? What works for you? What do you think is best for you? And the impact of having a child's voice heard in court. We have just heard from foster children who have aged out of the system and have come back and told us what an impact that made in their lives to be able to be heard, how having that lawyer represent their needs and wants in court was truly essential to their self-esteem and to their growth. So these lawyers who work in the CAP unit, I mean, I can't, first of all, can't say enough wonderful things about all my colleagues at Legal Aid, and that is truly not something I say. I've had, quite a few jobs in my time, and I worked at, 2 different firms before coming over at Legal Aid, 2 different places, and I can say that the people I work with have the biggest hearts and the best intentions, and you kind of have to in order to take a position to represent children in foster care, where you're hearing lots of hard stories some days. And sometimes you know that not always the best things will result, but they keep plugging on because of the greater mission. So that project is just so special, and I just admire all the people who work in that department. They also assist low-income parents struggling with special education rights, and we'll get to that on the next slide, because a division of CAP is the Education Advocacy Program. And so there are a lot of, the IEP, you'll see on the second bullet, it says attend and advocate IEP. So there's individualized education programs to ensure that students are receiving the appropriate special education. Unfortunately, we hear terror stories of kids who have been diagnosed with autism or something else, and maybe have an off day, and the next thing you'll hear is school police putting them in handcuffs or instituting some sort of punishment that is just unjust for an 8-year-old child. These attorneys at Legal Aid and the Education Advocacy Program, they're making sure that these kids are paid attention to and that the programs are appropriate for them and offer training. So this also is a very special part of Legal Aid. The parts that deal with the children and helping to formulate the future. So that's another division of the Children's Attorney Project. Now, the Family Justice Project, this you've probably heard of Legal Aid's capacity in one way or another, just because I can say that so many people that I've spoken to have said, like, oh, I've heard of Legal Aid. I've gone to their divorce class before I've gotten a divorce, or I've gone to their custody class before I decided whether I wanted to pursue custody. So our Family Justice Project represents domestic violence victims, helps educate victims about their rights to living a life free from violence. There's also a subdivision of the Family Justice Project that assists with immigration issues. The Family Justice Project, another extraordinary division of Legal Aid. And I will say this, I've had the fortune of being able to sit and shadow many of my colleagues in the Family Justice Project, and the wealth of knowledge they have bestowed on me regarding domestic violence, behavior, and the sensitivity that is required to work with victims and these kinds of cases. It's just truly astounding, because how I see them is they're lawyers, yes, but the way that they're also trained is they're also compassionate people who are trained to advocate on behalf of somebody who sometimes can repeat behavior or sometimes doesn't even know their own rights to live a life free from violence. So really just an important integral part of our legal aid. So the Consumer Rights Project, who I work very closely with actually, great folks at the Consumer Rights Project. You'll hear often in the news, just like nationwide, oh, legal aid filed class action suit against such and such bank because of X, Y, and Z. That's kind of what our Consumer Rights Project does. So they combat fraudulent sales practices, fight against abusive debt, and we're talking anything from like payday loans to title loans to foreclosure, Social Security benefits. We see a lot of folks come into the Civil Law Self-Help Center who we refer over to the Consumer Rights Project. To give you an example, we'll start seeing folks who come in and kind of go, one person comes in the morning and they tell you, hey, I got, 2 payday loans and the interest rate is 80% or whatnot. And kind of makes you go, ding, ding, that's wild and crazy that would be an interest rate, right? And then later on in the afternoon, you kind of hear the same thing and you're going, who is this new company that's coming about being predatory on people? And that's sort of how we refer cases to the Consumer Rights Project, but also the Consumer Rights Project. Those attorneys, they're your investigative attorneys who are looking through cases and these long contracts to see what kind of predatory things are put into contracts to attract the consumer. One of the things we've always talked about is like, what's a better word for consumer? Because we're all consumers, right? But one thing that I think never even came to my awareness until I started working at Legal Aid is how many times we just kind of sign off on things and assume that the other person is going to take the honorable route. And maybe I should say the other business, the other company, the other person, whatever. is going to take the honorable route because we need what we need, right? Yeah, sure, I'm going to sign this. I'm going to buy a car. Yeah, sure, I'm going to sign this. You're going to give me a loan. Yeah, sure, I'm going to sign this. I'm going to buy a computer. I'm going to sign this online, et cetera, et cetera. Those contracts are drafted by attorneys in the favor of the other side, most times, right? So when you're an average consumer and you just need a car to get to work, sometimes you're putting yourself in the position, or they're putting you in the position of really just being trampled on. And that's what our Consumer Rights Project does. They make sure that folks are not getting taken advantage of financially. So they're a really exciting division of legal aid, and they do great investigations and research into how folks are systematically, especially being preyed on. So the Guardianship Advocacy Project, this is a fairly new project. It's really exciting. It started a few years ago. It's less than 5 years old. You may have heard in the news a few years ago that there was quite a bit of controversy over some appointed guardians. Now, what a guardian is, right, is if there's a person who is found to be mentally or physically incapacitated, whether it be because of age or maybe a disability, the state, a person can petition the court for that person to be under guardianship. So this is extreme. Guardianship is the removal, essentially, of your right to decision making. It is the removal of a person's right sometimes to decide on their own finances, how to spend their own money, where to move, where to live. So as you can imagine, it requires incredible scrutiny before appointing someone a guardian. And it requires even more scrutiny to appoint someone as guardian over another person or over their estate or finances. Very, very, very sadly, a few years ago, it was found that there were a few private guardians in Las Vegas who were guardians over the protected person, this person who they were supposed to be protecting, taking their money, squandering on hundreds and thousands of their dollars. So, you know, bad guardian one was taking the money of 85-year-old person and going and checking their mail once a week and charging $500 to do that. And keeping that $500, and it amounted to $500,000. And the next thing you know, these folks who were supposed to be protected have lost all their money when that money was saved by them and was meant to be used for their care. I mean, it was just such disgusting and brutal behavior that there was a guardianship commission that basically said, we got to look into this. We got to look into these practices. We've got to scrutinize. We got to protect these people who we're supposed to be protecting. As a result of that, legal aid was brought in, and we began our Guardianship Advocacy Project. So every single person in Southern Nevada who is put under guardianship, they're called the protected person. Every single person now has their own lawyer. So our folks at Legal Aid are looking at that 85-year-old man's account and going, okay, who do you want to be your guardian? I'm watching you. I'm making sure you get the guardian you want, who you trust, and I'm making sure that that person is acting appropriately. And I can't tell you how important that is, of course, to make sure that there's another eye watching out for this person's money and their wishes and desires. So a really cool project, and we built a team of really amazing lawyers who, you know, right now because of COVID-19, unfortunately, have lost a lot of clients during COVID-19, and every time I get an update from them, though, they're plugging along and doing the best work they can to make sure that everybody's protected. A lot of senior citizens require extra protection and deserve to have their rights and needs expressed, and they're working so hard despite how difficult emotionally it must be for them. And we also have a pro bono project. So you're going to see over 900,000 people in Southern Nevada who qualify for legal aid services. That's it's an astounding number. And like I showed you, we have a staff of, 150. We're not enough, unfortunately. We're not enough to represent every person who needs our services. Because of that, we have to ask other lawyers to come in and help us. And that's where the pro bono project comes in. Our pro bono team reaches out to private lawyers lawyers who, you know, are working in firms, working for the government, and they say, hey, can you take a case? Can you take one or two this year? And we have an awesome crew of pro bono lawyers in Nevada all over who assist with our cases. And the Pro Bono Project is really cool. Every year, once a year, they do this big luncheon to thank all our volunteers and to give out awards for Pro Bono Lawyer of the Year, the Pro Bono attorney who's done the most hours, and they do an amazing job of keeping the community in touch with legal work that needs to be done, important legal work that needs to be done, that has to be done pro bono, right? So in 2019, 750 new cases placed, and you'll see those numbers quite different from the 293 in 1958. And we also have those volunteer lawyers who do our Ask a Lawyer programs, who do, you know, they'll just sign up for sessions on a Wednesday. Hey, I can cover the landlord-tenant Ask a Lawyer today and assist the walk-in clients or the call-in clients now with legal information. And I can tell you, I've worked with so many of our pro bono lawyers and volunteers, and just amazing people, because sometimes it's easy to get kind of caught up in your own caseload when you are a private attorney. And for these guys to offer their services and do pro bono work, it's just really extraordinary. Okay, so we've got our community legal education project where we offer those free classes that I told you about. I just want to show you the long list of types of classes we have. Again, folks can sign up online and do that at the Legal Aid website, and they can do them telephonic now. Now we're going to get to the self-help centers, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart. The Family Law Self-Help Center is my sister center. They're over at the Family Courthouse. So the self-help centers, how they're different from the other departments of legal aid, is we're housed in the courthouses, and these are just for anyone. And we are not their lawyers. They are not our clients, but anyone can just come in and say, I've got a question about the divorce process. How does this work, right? Maybe they can get a form. It's designed for unrepresented folks to come in and just get that legal information they need. They can't ask for legal advice, and we aren't permitted to give it. But as a result, the Family Law Self-Help Center, you'll see, they helped 64,000 individuals in 2019. And I can tell you from working at a center, it is the kind of place, we call ourselves the legal emergency rooms, right? Folks walk in, my staff, they don't sit down during the day. I mean, they are on their feet, helping this person fill out a form over here, answering a question over here, coming back and helping someone on the computer over here. They're running around and helping as many people as possible, answering all their questions. And my staff, I say, they're like the person with the information, so they're easily accessible to human beings. Of course, we've had to change because of COVID-19. But the Family Law Self-Help Center, they help with all kinds of family matters, so custody, divorce, name changes, things like that, adoption. So they have this great website, familylawselfhelpcenter.org. If you ever need to refer someone to that for information regarding those family issues, it's got so much information and so many forms. And then my home, the Civil Law Self-Help Center, which is located in the Regional Justice Center downtown. Again, we're that legal emergency room, and I can tell you that, you know, I worked there for quite a few years, and no day is the same, right? There's always a new question or a new issue to be looked at, but mostly what we assist with are eviction matters, small claims, debt collection, probate, guardianship. The thing about these things are, these are a lot of quick turnaround issues. An eviction matter, right? You missed your rent 1 month. You missed your rent 1 month because you lost your job, and you get an eviction notice that says, file a response to this eviction notice if you don't want to be evicted. What kind of response? What should it say? Where do I go? Where do I file? What's the process? You can't quite hire a lawyer that quickly to represent you in the next 4 days. And if you haven't paid your rent, well, then affording a lawyer to fight for you is going to be even harder, right? That's what we're there for. We're there to take folks in that legal process and make sure that they understand their rights as they go through it. And we have over 300 forms that we can help people fill out. So since we are the legal emergency room, what the staff does, we hear your story, we diagnose your issue. If need be, give you a form, tell you how to file it, give you information on the processes, let people know their rights, and make it as easy and fluid as possible without the assistance of an attorney standing with them and representing them in court. We have this amazing new program which launched in 2020. So as things happen, as COVID happens, sometimes it requires us to jump into new technology feet first. Folks who were contesting eviction notices and doing things like contesting a debt collection garnishment or something, they would either have to have the knowledge to file online, which, by the way, is no easy task. I say that the only people who know how to file online are trained legal secretaries. Lawyers are not trained to file online. Nobody really is except for trained legal secretaries. So to expect folks to learn how to navigate this incredibly difficult system to file online, it just wasn't reasonable. So everybody comes down to the courthouse, right, and files in person until 2020 when that was shut. Our doors shut and we had to figure out a way to get folks to stay home. We integrated this new guide and file system. So folks who get an eviction notice from the comfort of their phone, their home computer, answer a bunch of questions, populate the forms, press file, boom, it's at the courthouse. Now, that may sound simple to a lot of people, but, it just hadn't been done yet in the courthouse. So we were so excited when that launched, and we kept, thousands of tenants in the comfort and safety of their own home without having to come down to the courthouse and risk health concerns. So in 2019, we helped 47,000 litigants. I think that in 2020, we're around 40,000, and we had to completely transition to phone and email. And then halfway through the year, we started a chat feature so that you can hop on the civillawselfhelpcenter.org website, and one of my awesome staff members is there to answer questions via online chat. And I just have to do a shout out. They're not here, but I work with a staff of 6 who are right now busily on the phones and managing the chat feature. And these folks are truly the most amazing people you'll ever meet. The level of patience and knowledge required to talk to 47,000 litigants a day and deal with all these legal issues being thrown at you and listening to stories. I mean, they're just the most amazing people. So just have to give them a shout out. And who's eligible for our services? This is our income guidelines. So you'll see for one person in the household, the max yearly income is $27,390. And like I said, there are thousands of people who qualify for legal aid services. And that's for direct representation. Again, anyone can walk into a self-help center and just ask for information. And lastly, our last department is the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center. Again, I mentioned it is a center that was established after October 1, 2017, after the unfortunate shooting, and provides support and advocacy and legal matters as well, information on legal matters for victims. And they partnered with, Legal Aid partnered with Clark County and LVMPD. So that's a really, it's a great center that's offered really a ton of services. And so I just want to give you some numbers and information for how to find all of these resources. Again, Legal Aid, the website will direct you to everything, self-help centers, and the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center. And please peruse those websites. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of it. And we update that with kind of new information about programs and also changes in law that can affect the community. And that is the end of my presentation. So I think I'll hand it over to Kim now.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This has been so informative, and the work that you all are doing is so incredible, just serving our Vegas community. So thank you. We had 2 questions that were submitted prior, so I'd like to address those first. And then while we're talking through those questions, if any of our attendees would like to put any questions in the Q&A, you can do that and we can get to those questions. Or if you want to wait until we're done answering the first couple of submitted questions, you can also use the raised hand feature and we can unmute you and let you ask your questions as well. The first question, Lauren, that we had submitted, and you've spoken a little bit about this, but maybe you'd like to go into some more detail, is how has providing civil services for Nevadans changed since the pandemic began?
Right. I mean, I would say it basically flipped upside down in terms of how we reach folks, right? So, we used to be a very walk-in service. Now, we had phone lines at Legal Aid, of course, and email and all of that. But you would see our doors at our offices on 8th and Charleston, I mean, just flooded with folks any given day walking in saying, can you look at this contract, or, you know, would you be able to represent me in this divorce, et cetera. And our intake team at Legal Aid, which are folks who are trained to assist with folks who walk in. I mean, they're incredibly skilled at navigating how to communicate with folks who just walk in. But we had to turn everything around. So yeah, our Hotmail, our email, our chat feature. We get people who, you know, message us on Facebook, but right now we are, you know, phones and email and chat are the best way for folks to get to us. Now, I will say, in terms of administering actual legal services, the courthouses have now gone virtual, so our attorneys appear in court virtually. Almost everything is now done via email with opposing counsel. So, you know, we've had to pivot, and we had to pivot very quickly, but I'm sure that is not news to any of you.
Yeah, I know. I think our classified staff have definitely experienced a lot of that feeling of reevaluating everything and having to find new ways to kind of perform our duties as well.
Absolutely.
The next question we have is specifically about the eviction moratorium. The question is, concerning eviction moratorium in Nevada, do you feel that most tenants do not know the actions that they must take to protect themselves?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. And that is no fault of the tenants. That is what I consider to be a really difficult and convoluted procedure that requires a bunch of skill to understand, right? So here it is in short form. If you know somebody who is a tenant, or you yourself are a tenant, and you want to know how to protect your rights right now, there is a declaration, a statewide declaration on Legal Aid's website, and it's a tenant's declaration that says, hey, I've been affected by COVID-19. I can't afford rent right now. I'm protected. You can't evict me until March 31st, after March 31st. That's it. Simple. Take that declaration, sign it, and give it to your landlord, and keep proof that you gave it to your landlord. That's it, period, end of story, right? That's what I want the takeaway to be. You've got to sign it, and you've got to give it to your landlord. Here's where it gets a little more complicated, though. Folks do that, then they get an eviction notice. Well, I already gave the declaration, so I'm protected, right? You are, and probably will be, except for now you have to tell the court that you did that because your landlord is saying, I don't think you actually qualify for that declaration. So, second takeaway, sign your declaration, give it to your landlord. Secondly, if you get an eviction notice, you have to file a response with the court. If you don't file a response with the court, the judge is just going to think that you're okay with being evicted, right? And the question I often get is, but why? If this law was designed to protect me by just giving a declaration, why do I have to go through the trouble of going to court? Because the judge needs to see that you haven't given up yet either. So now the thing is, there's so many layers. There's a statewide moratorium. There's a federal moratorium. What protects what is really difficult information. So we were out there on the news, Legal Aid, several times, messaging. Get that declaration done. Whether or not you think your landlord's coming after you or not, whether or not you've given an eviction notice, just give that declaration to your landlord. And then if you get an eviction notice, then you've got to answer it. We did that. We did messaging. We were on the news. It was on our Facebook. We tried to get that message out to as many people as possible. Unfortunately, it just doesn't reach everyone. And like I said, the demographic at the Civil Law Self-Help Center, when you look at our demographics, there are many people who answer our surveys and who just say, I don't have access to the internet. So, maybe they'll hear it on the news one time, but if they don't, then there are folks who don't get that information. So, we find it's unfortunate when we can't reach certain people to know their rights. And which is why the Self-Help Center is so important. It's because once they're there in the courthouse, we can get them that information. But yeah, and the information is just not easy to process. I can tell you that we've done many trainings on the eviction moratorium with many lawyers, and amongst them, there's constant disagreement as to how to interpret. So as you can imagine, if you're a tenant who isn't, as knowledgeable on landlord-tenant rights, it's going to be real confusing, and it's going to be hard to understand what to do next. So that was a long way of saying, yes, it is difficult.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for providing that information as well. We have a question in the Q&A, a couple questions. Are the income brackets for gross income or net income?
Gross.
Gross. Okay, great.
Oh, gosh. That answer came to me quickly, and then I doubted it. So I'd have to double check that, but I think it was gross.
If folks did want to know, can they reach out to check and see if they qualify?
Oh, absolutely, yes. During the intake process, the advocates will ask for proof of income and alert you as to whether that person qualifies or not.
Okay, great. We have a question. Will we be able to get this presentation? Just so folks know, this is being recorded, and we'll post this presentation following. I'm not sure if we'll post it this week or next week, but yes, we'll make sure that a posting is put up of this so folks can watch it afterwards and access this great info. The next question that we've got, with regards to the guardianship advocacy, are you ever asked to take temporary guardianship while working things out?
So I guess how I'll clarify that is, you mean if the lawyers are assigned as temporary guardians? Generally, no, because their role is different. Our attorneys at Legal Aid don't act as the guardian of the person. They act as the attorney for the person. So our attorneys will represent the protected person while they look for perhaps a temporary guardian.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Checking to see, Deborah, do we have any raised hands? I just want to make sure that we get folks if they've got a raised hand.
I don't see anyone.
Okay.
I can't see participant videos. I'm so sorry. I can't see their screens.
No worries. I'm looking through, and it looks like we don't have any raised hands. One question that I had for you, Lauren, you've spent so much time here in Las Vegas. It sounds like you've spent time elsewhere as well. I wanted to ask what keeps you going here? This is incredible work that you're doing, but I would imagine that it's also difficult work. I have folks in my life who I know do this type of work as well, and it can be really hard. It can be really hard and to sort of intake that. So what are the things that keep you going, keep you hopeful, keep you serving our folks here in Las Vegas? How do you sort of replenish and keep moving forward?
Mm-hmm. I think I get my energy from two sources. The first is the customer base at the Civil Law Self-Help Center provides just that instant and immediate connection to another human being. And when I say why that's so important to me is because, when I was in commercial litigation, which is great, valuable work, and, the people who do that work are serving a great purpose, but for me, doing commercial litigation, I never felt that kind of satisfaction that I was helping people because I never saw people. And the communications that I did have were often with other attorneys and whatnot. And I never got to see situations that I could relate to. So, a corporate merger or whatever may be exciting to others, not knocking it, was just not fulfilling to me. So when I said, at that job, I would go to bed every night and just kind of go, okay, that was work, but that was it. When I got to the Self-Help Center and I'm surrounded by hundreds of people a day and hundreds of people a day who are really in dire, panicked, tough circumstances, that many times I was astounded at their resilience. And for somebody who is about to lose their home or somebody who's about to lose 25% of their paycheck and wondering how they're going to feed their family the next day, when someone like that, and I miss this so much about being the center, but when someone like that, you know, can thank you for the work you do and say, thank you for just taking the 10 minutes. This helped me so much. I think I can sleep better. I think I can make a good decision. You can be tired and be on your feet all day and have not taken a break, but that kind of instant gratification is just so, it's really inspiring, you know? Secondly, I will say that my colleagues at Legal Aid are truly extraordinary. And again, I can't stop singing their praises, and I don't want to sound cheesy because I feel like if I heard someone talking about how much they love their coworkers, I'd be like, really? But I think there are places where people really do love their coworkers, and I've found it, right? And the people at Legal Aid, their commitment to justice, their commitment to doing the right thing and fighting for people who don't have voices, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how inspiring that is. There have been so many days during this pandemic where I've been like, oh man, I think we just all done all we can, you know, because it's just the lines keep coming, the people keep calling, there's just no rest. And I just remember one day in particular, I was like, I just felt completely empty and was like, I don't know that there's anything left. I'm tired. It's a depressing world and everybody's in a hard place. And one of my colleagues sent me an email. He was fighting an eviction case, and this eviction case just wasn't going to go in the direction of the tenant. And I could tell by reading the minutes and going through the case with him. And he's like, but this is a mom with 3 kids who lost her job because of the pandemic, who, you know, had worked on the Strip for 16 years or whatever. And I'm like, this just isn't looking good for her in terms of legally. She's going to be evicted. And he just wouldn't let up. He stayed up all night reading these emails that she had forwarded back and forth from the landlord, reviewing her lease agreement, looking for case law around the nation that could protect her, that could help, and any kind of hook. And I remember being like, oh man, if he can do it, I've got to hang in there, right? And I have the most amazing boss, Barbara Buckley, who doesn't seem to quit. And she just, every time is just fights a good fight because there are people who count on us and make this place a better world when we're all treated fairly. So yeah, I think those are the 2 things. It's really other people who inspire me. And I just, whenever I need it, I just turn to them for a little bit of a fill up.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Lauren. It looks like we've got time for one more question, and I've got a question here in the chat. What role, if any, do paralegals provide within the center? Are they allowed to answer questions in certain circumstances?
Yeah, great question. So my staff is 5 paralegals and 1 law student. And a paralegal in Nevada is defined by anyone who works under the supervision of an attorney performing legal services. So sometimes we call the folks in my office paralegals, and sometimes we call them legal information facilitators. It just sort of depends, right? But essentially, they're paralegals, and they work under my supervision. And they are trained completely in the areas of eviction procedure, small claims procedure, debt collection procedure, probate, guardianship, and general litigation. So what they can do is give folks an understanding of the process. So if someone comes in and says, this is summons and complaint, what happens next? They can say, this is a debt collection case. This payday loan company is suing you, saying that you haven't paid them back. What will happen now is if you file an answer, that means you intend to participate in litigation. If you don't do anything at all, there's a chance they may win. They may be able to garnish your paycheck. If you do decide to go with the process, well, then you'll have to appear in court. And this is generally how debt collection cases work. What they're prohibited from doing is drafting documents like traditional paralegals do. Traditional paralegals draft documents all the time and assert, legal briefings and all of that. My paralegals can't do that because they're not our clients. We're just there to give information. Our paralegals also, can't give any legal advice. So they can't say, hey, this is a debt collection case. It looks to me like you're collection proof. You should just not file anything since they're probably not going to collect on you anyway. That's not the kind of thing they can say. But what they can say is, you just told me that you're 85 and on Social Security. That might make you collection proof. If you are collection proof, and they try to collect on you, the debt collection agency, they may not be able to garnish anything from you. So that's something to consider, right? So as a practicing lawyer, what I used to do when I represented clients was I would tell them, here are your options, but here's what I think you should do. This is what I'm advising you to do. The only thing that we can't do is we eliminate that last step. Here are your options. I can't tell you which one you should do, though. So that's what takes out the legal advice aspect and what differentiates us from other departments.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Of course.
I think we're going to wrap up because I know for a lot of folks, this is during their lunch hour, so we'll give you a few minutes to enjoy the rest of your lunch hour. We just want to thank everyone for attending today. Huge thanks to Lauren for being our very first in this speaker series. Thanks to Stormy and Deborah for all their work in making this happen. And thanks to Jim Boyer, Jr. on this as well, who is the Classified Staff Council President. Thank you all for attending today. We'll release a recording of this session once it's available, and we'll also announce the next speaker in the series once we've got those dates confirmed. So thank you so much to everyone who's attended today, and we hope you have a great lunch break, and thank you so much.